Welcome to The Explainer. You know, it really feels like the world is on edge right now. From strikes in West Asia to a grinding war in Eastern Europe, major conflicts are sending shockwaves across the entire globe. Today, we're going to trace those tremors, right from the flashpoints themselves to the rising prices in your daily life. And more importantly, we'll dig into how this volatile new reality is forcing a complete rethink of global trade, and how a rising power like India is writing a whole new playbook to navigate it. All right, so here's how we'll break it down. We'll start by connecting these faraway events directly to your wallet. Then we'll get right to the heart of the instability, the flashpoints themselves. After that, we'll look at this incredible race to basically rewire the world's trade arteries. Then we'll decode India's fascinating multi-alignment strategy. And finally, we'll zoom out to see what this new global chessboard really looks like.
Okay, first up, let's make this really concrete. It's so easy to see these conflicts as just distant headlines, something happening over there. But the truth is, the shockwaves travel right through the global economy and land squarely on our homes. We're talking about the price of gas, the cost of goods on the shelves. It is all connected. Let's trace exactly how.
Yeah, it's a perfectly fair question. And the answer is all about choke points in supply chains. See, the global economy really runs on this complex network of shipping lanes and energy routes, and the second those routes are threatened, the entire system just feels the pressure. Now check this out, because what's really amazing here is just how fast the reaction is. A conflict flares up in West Asia, and almost instantly Brent crude prices, which is the global benchmark for oil, jump by 8 to 9%. So why does that happen? Because the Strait of Hormuz, this critical waterway in the region, is suddenly under threat. Something like 20% of the entire world's oil supply passes through that narrow channel every single day. So even a hint of disruption sends markets into a total panic. And this really illustrates the domino effect perfectly. When ships can't safely use their normal routes, like the Suez Canal, they're forced to take these massive detours, often around the entire continent of Africa. I mean, that adds an extra 15 to 20 days to their journey. And all that extra time means more fuel, more insurance, more wages. It all adds up to between $500 and $1,000 extra for every single container. Now, when you spread that across a whole shipment and you add in rising insurance costs, the total cost for exporters can just skyrocket by as much as 40 to 50%. And guess where that increase ends up? It gets passed on to you.
So, we've seen the economic effects. Now, let's get to the cause. To really get a handle on this global disruption, we have to zoom right in on the flashpoints themselves. We're going to focus on the two main epicenters sending out these shockwaves: the escalating conflict in West Asia and, of course, that grinding war in Eastern Europe. Okay, this map shows you the heart of the recent escalation. Israel carried out a series of really targeted strikes deep inside Iranian territory. And as you can see, the targets are spread out, hitting some very sensitive locations near cities like Tabriz and Isfahan. This was absolutely a significant and a very deliberate projection of military power.
Now, if we look even closer, you'll see these weren't just random strikes. The primary focus was Iran's nuclear infrastructure. We're talking about sites like Natanz, that's Iran's largest uranium enrichment facility, Isfahan, a major nuclear research center, and Fordow, which is its most heavily fortified facility, literally built deep underneath a mountain. The fact that these were the sites that were targeted tells you everything about the core strategic concern that's driving this conflict. So what's the thinking behind these actions? Well, it's guided by a long-standing Israeli security policy called the Begin Doctrine. And this doctrine basically says that Israel will not wait for an enemy to develop weapons of mass destruction. The mere potential for a hostile nation to get them is seen as an existential threat, a threat that can justify a preemptive military strike. This really gives you the framework for understanding why those nuclear sites were hit. Meanwhile, thousands of kilometers away, another major flashpoint just keeps burning. This map gives you a projection of the situation in Ukraine, deep into the conflict, and the key takeaway here is that this is far from over. Russian forces have consolidated their control over a lot of territory, and they're making advances, which you can see around strategic cities like Pokrovsk. This war continues to have a huge impact on global food supply, on energy markets, and just general stability, really compounding all the disruptions we're seeing out of West Asia. All of this widespread instability has kicked off a really fascinating and urgent global response. Because with the traditional trade routes looking so vulnerable, a new geopolitical race is on, the race to build entirely new economic corridors. It's like they're trying to rewire the very arteries of global commerce. These narrow waterways, these are the world's most critical choke points. As we talked about, the Strait of Hormuz is the main artery for a quarter of the world's oil. And the Suez Canal? That's an artificial waterway that single-handedly shaves off about 7,000 kilometers from the sea journey between Asia and Europe. So when these points are threatened by conflict, the entire global trading system just grinds to a halt. And that vulnerability is exactly why everyone is scrambling for alternatives. So one of the big alternatives being pushed is the INSTC, or the International North-South Transport Corridor. This is a multimodal route, so it uses ships, rail, and roads. And it was started by Russia, India, and Iran. And the path is ambitious. Goods go by sea from Mumbai to Iran, then they travel overland through Iran to the Caspian Sea, and then by ship up to Russia with connections onto Europe. The whole point is to slash transit times by up to 20 days and cut freight costs by 30% compared to the old Suez route. And right here, this is its direct competitor, the IMEC, the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. This was announced at the G20 summit, and it's backed by the US and the G7. It aims to connect India to Europe through a totally different path. Sea route from India to the UAE, then a rail network through Saudi Arabia and Jordan, connecting to a port in Israel, and then finally by sea to ports in Europe. So what we really have here are two completely different geopolitical visions for the future of trade. The INSTC is built on a partnership between India, Iran, and Russia. It creates this north-south axis that avoids Western-controlled choke points. The IMEC, on the other hand, is clearly a product of Western strategy. It integrates India with key U.S. allies in the Middle East and Europe, and it's explicitly designed to be a counterweight to China's Belt and Road Initiative. The competition between these two corridors is literally redrawing the economic map of the world in real time. Which brings us to a really crucial question. How does a rising power like India, a key player in both of these competing corridors, navigate this incredibly complex chessboard? Well, the answer isn't about picking a side. It's about a really sophisticated strategy of engaging with everyone, a concept that's being called multi-alignment. So instead of getting locked into one single rigid Cold War-style alliance, India is building this flexible web of partnerships. You can think of it like a diplomatic toolkit. For security in the Indo-Pacific, it uses the Quad with the US, Japan, and Australia. To make sure supply chains are secure, it works with Japan and Australia. For green energy, it partners with France. So for each challenge, you get a custom-built coalition. That is multi-alignment in action. Don't join just one team, build different teams for different games. And this strategy isn't just about diplomacy. It has a hard power side to it, too. A key part of India's Act East policy is to become a reliable security partner for nations in Southeast Asia. And a perfect example of this is the recent progress on a deal to supply the advanced BrahMos supersonic missile system to Indonesia. This really positions India not just as a buyer of military hardware, but as a key provider of cutting-edge defense tech in the whole Indo-Pacific region. Now, to really get the significance of a deal like the BrahMos, it helps to understand the tech. See, the BrahMos is a cruise missile. Unlike ballistic missiles, which fly way up into the atmosphere in this big, predictable arc, cruise missiles fly low to the ground. They are super maneuverable and can actually hug the terrain, which makes them incredibly difficult for enemy radar to pick up and intercept. And that's what makes them such a powerful weapon. It allows you to strike a target from a safe distance, and it's exactly why they are so in demand. So, let's pull all these different threads together. We've got the economic shocks, the regional conflicts, this race for new trade corridors, and the rise of new strategic playbooks. What larger picture are all these events painting for the world? So, here it is, the bottom line. We are living through a fundamental shift away from an era dominated by just one superpower. The world is becoming multipolar, and in this new order, nations like India, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, they're no longer content to just align with one big bloc. They are actively chasing their own interests, building all sorts of diverse partnerships, and carving out their own spheres of influence. India's strategy of multi-alignment, it isn't some exception, it is a textbook example of how to play on this more complex and frankly more competitive global chessboard. And all of this leaves us with one last critical question to think about. As all these geopolitical tensions are building new walls between nations, are these ambitious new trade corridors a sign of greater cooperation? Or are they just the blueprints for the next generation of great power rivalries, drawing new lines on the map for future conflict? Only time is going to tell. Thanks for watching.